Okay, so the whole thing should now be recording. Hopefully the action cam will be better aligned to the drawing. So in theory, when I do this, you should be able to see both of my fingers. And incidentally, I'm focusing about here.
I also plan to come in again with a second recording, just referring back to any errors.
And both my fingers are peripheral to my vision. So let's say here and here, here and here are now the new parameters of the lens goggles. And as before, again, if I'm focusing here, as before, I'm aware of this somewhere here. I'm not looking at this except out of the corner of my eye, so I can hardly see this. The orange is here, and I get a sense of the orange somewhere here, down here. So there's this sort of diameter.
Again, I get the sense of this, but you, the viewer, don't, because of the problems of the lens distortion.
I'm aware of it a bit. I'm also aware of the orange down here. But now I also have some prompt cards, because these were the issues. The first one being the question of lens distortion. Okay, you can see the wide angle of the lens is creating some sort of curvature to the plane, the drawing plane, which sometimes makes a line that follows the edge of the action cam. Coming back to this question of the slight orange iridescence, where are those all around here? And it's not just due to the lens goggles, it's always there somehow, for some reason. But the distortion of the lens may make this straight edge seem curved. My vision would ordinarily create these kinds of curvatures anyway, but again, it's a factor of perception that we tend not to notice. So this question of eye dominance. In the previous video, okay, I mentioned the distortion of the lens, the wide angle due to the wide angle of the lens. But this is the issue. Again, if you've looked at the previous video, especially with my second voiceover, it's now third repetition, but I'm left eye dominant, and so my dominant left eye feels to me like it's ushering material in from the left to the right. I can, of course, look at this and look back, but this does feel like the curtailment of my...
When I say ushering material in, I mean objects of perception.
I mean, as conceptually, I'm interested in this.
Whatever I'm looking at.
The idea of...
seems to have this direction.
Coming in from the left.
Left to right direction.
Curtailing to the right. And what I'm bringing in from the left and curtailing to the right, is in this case a prompt card with the phrase ushered in from the left, curtailed to the right, due to left eye dominance.
Again, there's this question of repetition.
And in the process of telling you this,
which is necessary to drawing,
through the use of the prompt card, I've got additional material from my drawing, so it's a form of development of the drawing, insofar as what I'm doing is a form of drawing.
But it's not only repetition in relation to drawing, it's also in terms of thinking of oneself and speaking to oneself. So this kind of dialogue
and then
between oneself and the drawing is repetitive.
Isn't that just the way? I was going to say that I can sense my nose from what feels like predominantly my left eye. I can sense my nose. But actually, because the orange on the inside of the lens goggles is orange oil paint and is still wet, I've kind of protected my nose from picking up the orange paint with a piece of masking tape over the nose section of the lens goggles. So I can't actually see my nose so clearly, but I can see very clearly, I can see a fairly solid curve here. If I draw around it, it's actually, from where I'm looking, it's more or less here. Hopefully the lens of the camera is picking up this sufficiently, but in order for me to see this, I'm needing to look quite as much as I can to my left, to my right, through my left eye. And as before, as indicated here, along with this, alongside the orange, is a kind of blue iridescence. And this here is dark enough. And cutting through it is the edge of the drawing board. So this whole section here is the darker tone of the floor coming down here. Coming down here. Edge of the drawing board. Here. Edge of the drawing board. Which I'm saying is also here. And in that situation, this curve that I'm talking about here and here is now down here. And I can just about make out the top edge of the frameless lens of my glasses that I'm wearing inside the lens goggles. If I look at that here, the edge of the drawing board is now here. And what will be interesting when this dries is how the medium, which behaves relatively autonomously, will react differently to the absorbency of the filing card compared to the non-absorbency of the laminated white cardboard that I'm working on. I can also see, out of the corner of my eye, I can see I'm actually drawing around it now in space, focusing on it and drawing around it in space. Can actually see the leg of the tripod. Which is about here. At this angle. And this is always very difficult to establish. Whether it's going up like this or folding down towards me like this.
In this video, the angle that I'm drawing seems to perfectly match the apparent angle of the actual tripod leg, but in reality it's actually much more difficult to determine. This is what I'm talking about here, this difficulty to determine the exact angle.
So the next question I have on these prompt cards maybe this question of peripheral vision.
These questions arise from the first stage of the drawing,
I mentioned
the previous video.
In the first video that my centre of focus was often behind the imploded rectangle of the action cam. So at the moment it's here. However, this is slightly to the left. If I look directly forward, I'm actually looking at this point here that I can see. Out of the corner of my eye, I can see this red dot. And what I say here is that peripheral vision can operate at a very narrow dimension. And this is true here, I can observe it here. On the wider dimension, the wide areas of peripheral vision, from where I'm looking, and I hope you can see through the camera, indistinct, but as a colour it's strong, the curve here. At the same time, there's something that I can see over here. It appears black rather than white, but now I can actually see from the corner of my eye, the oval that I've drawn. Although not with any distinctness. I can see the pencil coming in. I can see my hand and arm movements. I can bring it in, bring it in. And I say here, I can see at the extreme left or right of the drawing. There's a degree of performance involved in this, which is obviously very apparent in the video. But I'm not expecting the video clip necessarily to be artwork. It's a medium, a tool of information, conveying information. But nevertheless, you, the viewer, are very aware of my hand and arm movements and manipulation of tools and so on.
Except in terms of the video as artwork,
so if I come back to...
I'm interested in, as I say, in the first video, squeezing second voice recordings.
Question of the action cam. If I align it, okay, I'm going to negate...
into the gaps that I can see.
I'm going to block out, I'm assuming, because I can't... At this moment I can't see. It's behind the imploded rectangle of the action cam. The end of the action cam is here.
Into the gaps that I can see and hear of my
the sense of iridescence,
my speech pattern.
Orange iridescence is now on this side.
So I can see it. I can see the gaps on the editing technology
down here
on the computer screen.
I need to look here to notice that actually just below the end of the edge of the cardboard is the orange of the interior rim of the lens goggles. But to come back to this...
There's a sense in which looking and observing are two slightly different things.
Imploded action cam.
Just as hearing and observing.
I arrange it here.
Could be considered two different things.
I mean, this is both the tool, the imploded action cam.
I'm relating looking to perceiving.
Is, as I said, tried to say in the earlier video, is a tool.
Looking to perception.
That somehow that enables me to notice the nature of my perception in action.
So it'd also be hearing to perception.
When I'm observing objects. So that this narrow band of the action cam is both a tool to aid perception and the object or motif itself, or one of them. The other being the rim of the lens goggles. So to position this more accurately, I have to look through the corner of my eye. And when I do this, having said that I'm left eye dominant, when I do this, because I'm looking to this is a point that I wanted to make more strongly in the first video, because I'm looking to the right of the action cam, this obstruction to my vision, which is the action cam, because I'm looking to my right of it, I feel as though I'm actually looking more through my right eye, but I'm not. I'm actually focusing my gaze between this relatively narrow dimension, between the edge of the action cam and the inside edge of the lens goggles, the orange of the lens goggles. Between here and here. Interesting that that diagonal runs straight through this writing here, peripheral vision. I'm talking about peripheral vision. It's running straight through the writing. Placing it under erasure in a sense, because it's a question. I'm not dealing with hard facts.
I mean, under erasure,
I'm dealing with what I sort
as
of
in scoring through.
objectively sense.
So it's putting the text to question,
Subjectively kind of want to happen.
rather than saying that the text is simply wrong.
I'm wanting what I say and notice to feel, if not actually be, correct.
I think the term under erasure has been considered by certain philosophers, either Heidegger or Derrida. And just to come in again with yet a third intervention, sous-rature, I think, would be the French for under erasure. The philosophers are the German Martin Heidegger and the French Jacques Derrida. I mean, in terms of drawing, it's what we do when we erase and leave a trace, in a sense.
If I look up without moving my head,
the history of what we've done never,
I don't know to what extent you can see this,
never completely
if I
disappears.
look up without moving my
So
head,
language was first problematized, but what we have done is called to question
there's a sense of
by virtue of being erased and leaving left as a trace. In this way, through a couple of examples by Heidegger in his writing,
there's a sense of the end of the action cam,
and was taken up and developed as a technique by Derrida.
Something like this across here, I don't know what it is, it's blurred. It's very blurred.
But interestingly, in a sense, this third intervention places the second intervention under erasure, as the second intervention did to the first voice recording.
And if I look to my left,
it's calling the content of the
edge of the action cam,
audio element of the video to question.
Sort of an edge, no more than an edge, also blurred.
So the third voice recording, in a sense,
if I move it towards it,
will put the second recording under erasure. I mean, here in the second recording,
at the same time,
because I'll probably have to come in over the top, there won't be any space left.
If I look
at that point in the recording, I am anticipating
this way,
that I'll have to do this
down here,
and here and now.
So I feel as though I'm looking this time through my left eye.
I'm speaking about this question in and as the third intervention.
But it's not. It's with both eyes, but through this.
So this might be confusing to listen to.
Lower left,
but it's actually of interest.
Dimension between the edge of the action cam
to me
and the curve of the lens goggles.
I'm literally looking for spaces
somewhere here
to bring in this extension of the discussion as a third intervention.
All these points.
The kind of thing that I would feel I could do quite naturally in drawing, working and reworking. Scoring through, in a sense.
I've now spoken about most of these, but
maybe through literally erasing.
To reiterate,
working with a stronger pressure of the pencil, the medium.
This question of eye movements,
whatever the medium is,
there are two basic kinds.
As performing its own means of scoring through.
There's the
previous
the
elements.
eye movements that occur through the movement of my head, such as this. I'm looking at this point. Or this. I'm looking at this point. Or this. where if the action cam is calibrated correctly on the lens goggles, then you should actually see more or less the point that I'm seeing with no problem. Because I'm moving my eyes by moving my head. My eyes stay still. This is one key point about eye movement. And I mean, we do this involuntarily most of the time. The second kind of eye movement is that which is independent of the head. This is the one that the mechanical mode of perception of the action cam, of the camera, can't pick up. And it's the one where...
I mean, there's actually a third.
I'm looking at aspects of the drawing that you can't necessarily see along with me. For example...
I mean, this second one means that the head stays still and the eyes move only.
There's a very nice one up here. If I look up like this...
The third one is where the head moves and the eyes move independently in different directions, which is the strangest.
It might be enough for you to be able to also to see in the action cam, but I'm actually using my eyes to look up towards my head without moving my head. I can see this, and out of the corner of my eye...
But if you hold your head between your hands and move your head, you feel as though you're moving your head with your hands.
I can see this very strongly.
You find that you can move your eyes independently.
And I can see that it cuts here.
Of that movement of the head.
So I'm looking around here. My focus is here, looking up. Peripherally I can see this, and I can see the orange of the oval, something that I've lost it, something that I've drawn around. I can see out of the corner of my eye the edge of the filing card. I see something here out of the corner of my eye. I can see this out of the corner of my eye. I can see this again peripherally to my center of focus, which is here. It's now here. If I do this, this point, this edge and this edge are just about the width of the action cam. So the other question concerns repetition. The point at which I might have overdone it, you might be finding the video a little bit boring, but
which I shouldn't be saying.
There's an issue with this, which again I've already mentioned, but it's to do with the extent to which my speech is working for and against the drawing and vice versa. I think if I were drawing this without speaking, I would be approaching this in a very different way. I'd be looking much more carefully at the the form of the drawing, the sort of aesthetic considerations of the drawing. I'm actually not. The drawing is actually forming itself almost by accident as a consequence of what I'm trying to say. So my speech intrudes into the quietness, if you like, of the drawing process, what should be the drawing process.
So it does actually have its own aesthetic.
Equally, when I focus on the drawing itself, I get absorbed in that. It disrupts the relative fluency of my speech.
I mean, the aesthetic comes through,
given that my speech is prone to be somewhat disfluent.
Almost by accident, by chance.
So there's repetition involved.
But determined by the processes involved.
I'm repeating the criteria.
Processes of which involve speaking my thoughts.
Until or if I can find other additional criteria.
While drawing.
By repeating the criteria through speech, I'm actually also revisiting parts of the drawing, working over them, further developing them. In the process, the drawing builds up in terms of development and layers. But this question of engaging and disengaging is something that interests me. It's as though it's the reverse in drawing. You disengage from, I don't know, intellectual thought, conceptual thought, sort of conscious cognition. You disengage in order to better focus on the drawing. It's as though focus on the drawing involves a glance, and the psychoanalyst and theorist Jacques Lacan talks about the glance as involving uncertainty. It can be an interim moment in decision making, and the glance is held. So the instant of the glance can be of variable length of time, while one is making up one's mind. And this strikes me as something to do with the nature of drawing. To hold certainty, to hold decision making in abeyance while the drawing is in process. So it's as though the process of the drawing is an extended glance.
I'm actually also doing this at this very moment while looking and listening to the video. I'm waiting for points where I need or could intervene.
And you'll be hearing in the background ambient sounds, in this case of the barking dog, or the barking dogs in the neighbourhood.
So my silence in the second voice recording, my silences are forms of glance in a sense.
So a lot of this will sound like repetition.
Auditory forms of glance, and of quite extended lengths of time. And during that time,
how to articulate this question is very interesting to me.
I do feel uncertain.
The instant of the glance.
Unsure of when I'll again need to intervene.
According to Lacan, can be for as long as it takes.
Or feel I should intervene.
To achieve certainty. Something like that.
For as long as it takes to achieve certainty, to see the point. of the next intervention.
This will have been said before. Maybe in itself it's not very much. It's nothing very much. But there's something about the rarity value of theories that makes them useful. They stand out. Rather like quotes from an authority that are probably in themselves not saying very much, but it's the fact that they're said by an authority that gives them a certain power above and beyond one making the same statement oneself.
This is actually a very Lacanian point in itself.
I'm looking back at this centre and following the line of the action count all the way
The
up.
question of the authoritative
I still haven't reached the top.
Big other,
Because my eyes are moving,
which is an assumption
in coordination with my head, and I'm now looking up. The point of focus is about here.
that we could do well to question. So what I've said here about the authority of reference
The present point of focus.
doesn't necessarily have to be like that.
And while I'm silent,
Just from my point of view, I see these guys as authorities.
I'm gazing in this reflective sort of manner,
And they help to determine
which is to do with the
my own thinking
extension of the glance.
of what I'm doing.
Or the gaze. The instant of the glance.
There I think I tread on slightly different theory.
Phrase from Lacan.
The,
The instant of the
the
glance.
gaze
Can be for as long as it takes
being something
to
different
achieve certainty.
from the glance, from a theoretical point of view. So I confuse the two at that moment. The glance with the gaze.
If I look from here
But I mean, extended looking
up to the corner of my eye,
and extended listening
my eyes looking
does seem more like a gaze
as far to the right as I can go,
than a glance.
I can see this is blocked. What happens here is blocked from view. I'm gazing fixedly here, and here is the very blurred edge of the frames of my orange glasses, my reading glasses. This is very blurred. It's a sort of yellowy orange. And I can't see what I'm doing. It's behind the arm of the glasses, beginning of the arm of the glasses. And here is the stronger edge of the inside edge of the lens goggles. Okay, I now know what this is. This darker edge here is actually the top edge of the frame. Right hand edge of the lens of the action cam. action come.
Here I think I'm slightly losing track. I think I'm kind of just looking for things to do. It's as though I get the sense that the drawing could go further.
And the line of the spill appearing to come in.
But I'm not really sure how.
And the line of my brush.
In terms of the points that I need to make to the viewer,
the axis of my paintbrush.
I think I've said it all already.
And the edge of the action cam.
See, I'm kind of floundering here, not quite sure.
And the line of my
Not quite sure what to do
paintbrush.
next.
I'm trying to reach the top of it, which is here. But of course I never will.
So trying to reach the top of it, and of course I never will, is...
Here's the brush itself, the bristles of the brush. Here's the edge of the action cam.
It's kind of speaking metaphorically about the nature of drawing itself. That it's a medium in a constant process of becoming.
And through here,
By nature unfinished.
is the iridescence. And it happens this side as well. And we'll have the word enable here. Moving my head. If I look up. For this reason. For the reason of making the drawing. And I'm going to stop. At this point and look at what I've got.